Okay. Right. You're just gonna go there and talk. Just say something. I can hear you through it, but I think with everyone else quiet, it'll be okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. It's definitely on the inside, yeah. Yeah. One last thing is this thing has to be plugged in. A great story. I can find that. I end up on this list. Okay, good to go. Well, yeah, and I'm saying, so in the early days of my education, I it's already going on, right? So there's yeah. And then I also went to my senior years. Yeah. So when it's scary, and also when the power is there's probably like all of that is all the like parts of the but I go to Cuba and I also yeah. I go but I go to Cuba and I also yeah. I yeah, we have a YouTube live that's just going to show you can see it, you can see yourself in it. So you know,
right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for waiting. Apologize for the delay. Tech is always doing something new. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Tristan. I'm the Education and Studio Coordinator here at InterAccess, emerging practices of new media artists and new media art here in Toronto. I want to begin this program by stating our anti-oppression statement. InterAccess is committed to anti-oppression pedagogies and artistic practices. InterAccess stands in solidarity in its fight against white supremacy, systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and anti-Indigenous colonization. In our commitment to anti-oppression work in the arts and beyond, it is urgent that we all unite to listen, understand, and educate ourselves and stand up against systemic and individual acts of violence and oppression. I would now like to take the time to acknowledge the land in which InterAccess stands upon. Toronto is within the District 1 Spoon territory. The District 1 Spoon is a historical treaty between the First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Haudenosaunee people that have bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited to this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited to this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We acknowledge this treaty. We are also critical about the ways that it has largely been breached by settlers and newcomers. And now, at this time, I would like to introduce Miriam, who is our representative of STYLY, who have graciously organized and put on this event for us today. She'll be able to tell you more about them, and I'll hand over the mic to you to introduce our speakers and the rest of the event. Thanks all for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining on a Friday evening. Very nice to gather and be together, and I'm really looking forward to the presentations tonight. It's such a treat to have artists here from New York and to have both Slav and Noah presenting about their work with us. Yeah, so it's really nice to get to do things in person, of course. So exciting. My name's Miriam, for those of you who I haven't met before. I'm working as an art curator, and I work with STYLY Global, doing some community organizing. STYLY is quite new here in Toronto, but part of what the STYLY platform wants to do is generate community around XR and VR and AR and creative practice. So, yeah, before we get into the presentation, I want to give a formal introduction to the artists who will be speaking and also tell you a little bit more about STYLY. So along with the various other projects STYLY Global gets up to, like I was saying before, we're in the middle of presenting an ongoing series of events in Toronto, likely to be happening about once a month with the goal of bringing the creative XR community together. So this is one of the first in-person events we've been able to have in a while, and I'm very lucky to be able to organize these ongoing. So I really want everyone here to know that this is like an open community, and if you have ideas of things you want to do or present about your work, I would love to be in touch and really welcome that kind of engagement. This is the idea is that we can do things together, grow the community, get to know each other, and whether it's a workshop, a presentation, an artist talk, or something else, we'll love to hear from you if there's something you want to bring. Or if you just want to come, that's always nice, so let's stay in touch. STYLY Global is developed by the Japanese company Psychic VR Lab. It's a free XR platform that operates as a mobile app, a web-based studio and gallery, and a VR headset app that's available for most major VR headsets. That is comprised of a studio application which can be used to design and publish VR and AR, and it's compatible with a lot of other 3D design programs, which makes it very, flexible and agile and can be used for a lot of different purposes. The STYLY Gallery is where all of the content that is published in the studio lives, and is available, as I just said, on the various apps, so web browser, mobile app, and a VR headset. It's a really nice way to host things online and create an access point for different kinds of XR work. I've got a few QR codes on the whiteboard here, so perhaps after they just link you to different augmented reality experiences, and they're quite fun to check out. The STYLY galleries got thousands of different XR experiences that are created by artists from all around the world. It's a project that's been open, the platform's been open for just over 4 years. So artists have been generating different kinds of VR and AR and publishing it on STYLY, and it's just so much fun to explore. So that's the kind of organizational side that I come at things tonight with, and it's such an honor to be able to present this event and the artists that are speaking tonight. I think what I'll do is just give a short formal introduction for Ardak, who will begin, and then I'll do that again before each presenter. So Ardak Mukanova is a graphic and motion designer working on both physical and digital projects. Natively from Kazakhstan and currently completing an MFA at Parsons School, completed both BA and MA as a graphic designer at St. Petersburg University in Russia. Right now, Ardak is focusing on speculative worlds and other realities where we can imagine worlds without humans while trying to create a transmedia space that is a compilation of very digital and physical mediums. Thanks. So I'm going to pass the floor. Come on up, Ardak, and I will pass it over to you. Thank you so much. And please, everyone, when you have questions, like we're a small group, so feel free to participate and we can chat more towards the end of everyone's presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ardak. Yeah, currently I'm based in New York, and I study at Parsons. So yeah, I'm graduating soon in May, and I'm working on different mediums, including VR and AR. And yeah, today I'm going to talk a little bit about my STYLY project, which was also like a collaboration between my school, Parsons, and the New View, STYLY. Last semester, we did like a whole course with Kyle. Kyle Lee is one of our professors who's teaching XR for many, many years. He's very cool. So yeah. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I am like originally from Kazakhstan, and I'm a graphic and motion designer, and I work as a graphic and motion designer for 5 years already. And basically, I've been focusing on online courses for Coursera, more like educational content and also television. So yeah, my journey into XR started from my work, I think, because for one of the courses, neurolinguistics, it was a site like brain studies. So the professors wanted to have something to represent the brain, like so people can actually go and see, inside the structure of the brain, like everything. It was an experimental project, but yeah, it was pretty exciting, and the course is free, so everyone can take a look. The second one was visualization of the text, Dictionary of Hazards by Padik. It's kind of like a game experience for the gallery in St. Petersburg. So yeah, they kind of like asked our team to build a game experience based on the book. So we tried that, and both of them are very, like the beginning projects. So hopefully in the future, I'll have the chance to refine them and make them, better. Because right now, like, VR is kind of evolving. So yeah. Yeah, now I'm gonna talk a little bit about my project with review, Neo Tangri, and Parsons, and also I'm grateful that I got like gold prize for that. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, that was cool. So basically, uh, the project is about wool. So basically, uh, the project is about digital myths that I translated from my culture. Tangri and nomadic shamanism. It's a god. So I'm kind of like using our traditional uh, myths to build, uh, the space. And I'm gonna talk about it. Oh, I don't know if you need the codes, but yeah, I'm gonna talk about it like a little bit about the background because also I don't know. I'm not sure if I ever talked about like of the inspiration of the project ever because I never got a chance even in the STYLY. I don't think they even know that like where inspiration come from. So um, it's based on petroglyphs. If you know, it's stone engravings that are not in the cave but on the open air in Kazakhstan, basically next to my city. And I was inspired by them because archaeologists they don't really know who's represented. I mean, if you see here, there's like little humans and animals there, but like these huge figures, they considered to be like gods or aliens. So nobody knows, and I wanted to kind of like speculate on this subject. And based on them, this is a silly drawing, but I would draw some of them, and then I built 3D models out of the drawings. Uh, I have 33 now. It's not everything, but yeah. And then uh, I did a motion capture. If you know Rococo Suit, you can take it and you can make your own motion. So I tried to make the motion like not real human, but like very weird. Because if you know motion capture, like in rigging, it's pretty hard to find a model which is not human and like rig the model because basically everything is human, like human motion everywhere. So if you want like I don't know, spider motion or like any other animal, it's pretty hard to find. Or yeah, you have to pay for that. Yeah. So I tried to create my own, but still based on human. Yeah. Uh, so there is a map of the VR world, which is also based on the myths. Um, and some first iterations were a little bit different from the outcome. So I also try to build like more a playful experience that you actually need to, I don't know, like break something or shoot something or do something. So it's like a game experience more than just like observation or, like many more than just like observation or, like many times in VR, I noticed we don't really have like a game experience. We more like have just uh, observing everything. So yeah, and after some iterations, Kyle also told me that maybe this version is very dark and not very exciting. So we decided to make it very bright, and that worked, I guess. So, and also I have actually the second part uh, of this called Annihilation, but it's like we inside the cell, inside another planet. Um, it was supposed to be like one project, but it was too big, so I split it, and it's like two separate right now. Yeah, I also have a link for that. Yeah, and actually for both of the projects, we built a physical controller. But yeah, I didn't really have enough time to build all wires inside it, so it's just an object, but it plays a role of the real hand in the VR. Like, for example, in VR, I have like a tree-looking device like this, and you need to kind of like destroy aliens, like literally doing this. So when you have this controller and you take it like that, and it's just the same feeling. So we kind of like try to focus on the same feeling as this digital hand is actually real hand, and you kind of like immerse yourself. So it worked as well. Uh, yeah, it was very fun. But I wish I can maybe refine it in the future as well and make a second one and maybe like make wires with Arduino and everything because right now it's more like an object, like a sculpture. So yeah, yeah. I also have AR, but I guess we can try that later.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to show us, you can also.
Yeah. So and this is not, yeah, this is not like the whole story, I guess, of the project because uh, my initial interest in that also was to build, you know, a world and make it a transmedia world. So uh, basically, different pieces of, you know, I have a book, I have animation, I have like VR and other mediums, and they all uh, kind of like make this world. So yeah, I didn't. I mean, I mentioned that kind of like make this world. So yeah, I didn't. I mean, I mentioned that I rigged the figures, but yeah, some of them are here, so you can see like a little bit weird motion out of the rigging. So hopefully it's not looking like human motion, but yeah. Um, I tried to also use them in the environment in New York. I have more videos, but those are like the first ones, I guess. Um, so the idea was the glyphs are not visible to human eyes, but they appear when we, in some kind of like state of mind. Like I don't know how to explain that. Like like people who sense, I don't know, ghosts or something. So yeah. So the idea was some people see them, some people not. So all the project is based on uh, speculation about the glyphs because I'm also like telling people that they are real, but we can't see them. uh, yeah, and I also have like physical objects that are supposed to be materialized glyphs and like bone like bones from the glyphs maybe. That's why they are not looking the same way. If you imagine like I don't know dinosaurs, so it's like a remains of the glyphs. So uh, yeah, I also have a bestiary that contains all the information about each glyph, their function, their place in this world, and what are they doing. Uh, yeah, And I did some kind of a projection, like to merge two worlds, like the physical world and the digital world together. And yeah, it's supposed like we're supposed to interact with that because like we also can take some physical goods, like put on like here and act as a kind of a ritual. But yeah, uh, yeah, we're gonna have the show in May. Yeah, and all our projects gonna be there. If you around New York City, please, yeah, come to our show at Parsons. It's open to public, and yeah, we're gonna present our projects as well. Like my project is gonna be there, and all my group mates too, and everything is very exciting. We're also gonna have a symposium online, live streaming. Um, yeah, sorry for that. A little bit of advertisement, but yeah. And thank you so much. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So once you get Arda, will you go back to this slide with the QR code?
Oh, is the AR?
Yeah, exactly. We can scan that if anyone wants to take a look at the augmented glyph sculpture.
Yeah, but you need to have the STYLY app. So
And take a look. I mean, can we get from so far? Okay.
yeah, it has a sound too. So
So a good way to position it is to point the phone at the floor when it asks for a flat surface.
yeah, on the floor or on the table.
Table is to point the phone at the floor when it asks for a flat surface.
Yeah, on the floor or on the table.
Table. See.
I think we can use it.
Okay.
It's loading. I think it's the internet.
And also loading.
Because it's pretty light, like the scene itself is pretty,
Yeah.
it doesn't have anything.
That's okay. It might take a minute to load, or you might have to download the app, but we can share my also to take a look.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have a chance.
Does anyone have any questions in the meantime while we do some loading?
Just like a technical question. I don't know what rigging is.
Rigging? Oh,
So we can hear the recording. Yeah.
it's when you have like an animation, for example, like human animations usually like a T-pose, right? So, and to animate, you need to have like all these points.
Yeah, right.
So, and then sorry if it's
No, it's like a motion capture.
Yeah.
But for like, is it mostly for the body or can you do it with other?
Yeah, you can do it with like a human, you can do it with animals, but yeah, like with animals it's a little bit harder because usually like open source, uh, mostly like it's really hard to find open source like animals. Like usually it's only human motion and we have like a lot of human motion, but it's all human. So yeah, if you want like something else, it's like for in my case it was easier to just create myself. So, but you still can find, I think you still can find like some dog or like, like pet animation, but still like it's not so, that variety of. That variety of. Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, it also. Yeah, I don't know if somebody wants to. Just, yeah, walk around because I wanted it on the floor.
So do you use motion capture for so what system were you using the motion capture?
I used the focus view. So the focus view is actually pretty useful. It's it's just this view with a lot of
Please, you can.
Yeah.
and you can use their software that captures that information. You can just
Yeah.
so it's very
And you use that to animate these clips. Oh, interesting. So there's like almost like a performative element to the motion of the clips. So did you have like each one have their own sort of personality based on the motion?
yeah, kind of. I mean, I didn't think about, like personality when I did the motion because I just tried to make it weird. And I didn't really think about it, but then when I rigged some of them and I tried to uh, kind of, yeah, so like one would have, like aggressive motion.
Yeah.
Another one has, like very slow or like very calm. And it kind of came when I did the motion, like in the process. So yeah, I didn't think about that
That's
before.
interesting. That's really fascinating. How did you translate? Because the human body has whatever the limbs that we have. How did you translate that to the rig that you had on each of the clips?
Yeah, so the process was a little bit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like sorry. Yeah, we usually like have a T-pose, right? So in the beginning of each motion, you just create kind of like a -1 frame, sorry, with the T-pose and rig everything, and then this motion became how do I explain that? Like for example, if you see here, it's a human body, right? But it's kind of like
Yeah.
twisted. So basically, when you play the animation, it's gonna do like this weird motion. But in the very first frame, you need to rig it like
Yeah.
a T-pose.
So for example, that one on the bottom right.
Yep.
It has this appendage that comes up from about where the head is, I guess, where your head would be.
This one?
No, the one in the
Oh.
yeah, that one.
This one.
This sort of appendage
Oh,
that
yeah,
comes
yeah, this
up.
one. Oh,
So is
yeah.
that like if I were to move my head, it would kind of use that root node here to animate the rest of the appendage?
Yeah, and actually this was custom as well. I animated this separately.
Oh,
And I have a couple of them animated separately because I couldn't find any. So but I of course I tried to make this custom ones pretty easy because it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to animate each frame. So it takes a lot of time. But this one, yes, it's taking your head motion,
Yeah.
and this thing
Yeah.
is kind of like moving with you. So yeah.
Sorry. The sort of the topography and the way that like the environment is created, like how do you create something like that? Do you have like a pre-existing thing that you bring into STYLY, or do you make it yourself?
All the thing. Sorry. everything here I made myself. Nothing is from STYLY. Yeah, because yeah, they do have like a lot of assets, but in this case, we didn't use any of them. I primarily work in Cinema 4D, and I build everything in Cinema and transfer to Unity, and then to STYLY. I mean, usually it's easier to work in Blender, and but I've been working in Cinema for many years, so that was easier for me. Yeah, so it's just everything is yeah custom. Um, the landscape it's pretty easy to build, I think, and Blender and both.
Keep on, and of course we can keep asking each other questions throughout. Thank you so much, Arda. I really loved learning more about the sculptural elements, the non-digital sculptural elements of your work too. I'm like familiar with the work that I've seen online, but it was so nice to see this connection to that you're building physical objects and working with them in physical spaces. Really nice connection then with what happens with the like augmented digital activation. Thank you. That was wonderful. I would like to introduce Slavika Pepper-Kovic, who will be our next presenter. You're welcome to like come up and get everything started. I will just give you a formal introduction. Slavika is an artist and educator based in Toronto. Her contemporary artworks have shown in major museums, including the Palais de Tokyo, the Grand Palais Museum, Musée d'Art Moderne de Villeneuve, the Centre for Contemporary Art, and the Studio National des Arts Contemporains. Her work has been reviewed in Art Press, Liberation, Le Figaro, Beaux-Arts magazine, and books published by MIT Press. Slavika has hosted lab workshops, exhibited her work, and has lectured on new media and contemporary art issues in Europe, Canada, the United States, Asia, and South America. She's previously taught at Alberta University of the Arts in the Media Arts Digital Technologies Department as their visiting artist in residence and at Ryerson University in their New Media Studies program. Slavika has also developed curriculum in Canadian incubators such as the Banff New Media Institute and the Canadian Film. Slavika has also developed curriculum in Canadian incubators such as the Banff New Media Institute and the Canadian Film Centre's Media Lab. Slavika holds a BFA from Ryerson University's School of Image Arts and an MFA from Le Fresnoy Studio National des Arts Contemporains and an MDES from OCAD University. Currently, Slavika is completing a PhD candidacy at York University in Cinema and Media Studies and is a current full-time professor at Seneca College at the York University campus in the School of Media. Amazing. A lot of information. It's such an honor to have you. So I will hand the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. And Miriam is very open in collaborations. I met her and she invited me, which is really kind. So thank you. And, so it's definitely connect with artists and try the platform. So I'm going to talk about artistic considerations for XR, different types of platforms, what I've done, what I'm working on. You can ask questions. It doesn't have to be structured, but I can talk about some AR experiments, how I started out. I'm going to talk about some VR interaction models, what I'm thinking about in terms of how we build these environments, how do we create methods of interaction. And I'm also going to talk about my research for my PhD thesis, which is volumetric video for VR. So that's what I'm working on now. So this is one of my first AR works, take me somewhere new. And I was interested in thinking about building an Unreal Engine, kind of a gaming engine, how we can think about spaces, taking animations out into the world and seeing how they live in the world, right? So you have a main figure here running with animals. I'm interested in this kind of cohabitation environments we have with live aspects. But we're starting to see that characters are disappearing and reappearing, and moving in. We can have these kind of hybrid worlds that live in real space with natural elements and other kind of natural elements, which are these kind of synthetic crystals. You can start seeing things disappear, reappear as it moves, a 360 animation. This is in a gallery setting. You can see kind of the natural materials moving into inside spaces don't really work as well. But I'm starting to think about this kind of cohabitation of spaces. So, and I'm glad we got to speak. I see why we're invited together. So this, I'd like to tell you a story. This is the crema stone. So I'm a Canadian, born in Toronto, but my parents are of Serbian descent. And so my mother's side of the family is from a mountainous region outside of Webgl, which is close to Crema. And it is known mostly for its farming community, but also because of the cosmic ball, the crema stone, which is the stone. And for scale, you can see this little sign here. You can see how big the crema stone is. And what it's known for is that, you know, as legend dictates, this village was flooded with millions of such stones from space that radiated energy that causes clairvoyance. Right? And it's believed that this clairvoyant thoughts have influenced the lives of future generations, so including me. Right? And that even a small museum where you can visit this cosmic ball, this remnant of the state where millions of these cosmic balls arrived. Right? So that's my one side of the family. And my other side of the family, my father's side, is from Pennsylvania, which is a hot spring town. It's a mineral town, which is known for healing waters. So I was interested in this dichotomy between clairvoyance and healing that's in my roots, and how we think about this in a new way. So one place I walk by, especially during the pandemic, every day, is in Trinity Belmont Park. And there's a dog bowl area. But what it looks like is almost like a carved out crater of the city, right? It literally looks like something meteor dropped there, and that people and animals gather and play in this area and then leave, right? Anybody ever been to Belmont Park? You know what I'm talking about, right? So I was really interested in seeing if I can think about this as a healing space. Or it was a healing space, I go there. And I created this augmented reality work where there's a healing crystal. So you have this kind of fog that appears, and the snow that falls, and you know we can see in this augmented reality that I made specifically for this space. But we can consider this a healing space. So kind of like this, taking these physical, you know, it's just on a hill and it just dips down, but it does feel like a crater has fallen. Or it feels almost kind of special. Why everyone gathers there and leaves this kind of pit of the city, right? And then I decided to take the crystal for a bit of a walk. We try different places. We're trying it in galleries and healing different places, train routes, restaurants in Hamilton, right? So we can see different places, carves, right? So, you know, I really like that about augmented reality. We're starting to see physical and, you know, these objects in space that overlap and create these new narratives, right? That's building with live things that are happening. I started to continue my research in Unreal Engine, looking at different types of interaction worlds. I'm trying to think about more constructive worlds and closed worlds. So I'm going to talk briefly about three of them. Maybe I'll show you some works, but I'll go over others. But I looked at primarily three ways of understanding how we can get people to interact. And one of them is, I call it guided interaction or rail-based interaction. So if you put a VR headset, it kind of feels like you're on a roller coaster. It's taking you around a certain space, right? Task-based, you have to do work, right? You have to go and accomplish a task to complete, right? In this kind of art world. And sandbox interaction, which is kind of a play space. You just kind of wander around. And I also wanted to see if we can build companions, so people can actually travel with you around these spaces, so you're not alone all the time. VR is a very lonely kind of headset world. So this is kind of what this is a video. Oh, this is a video. This is kind of what the environment in Unreal Engine looks like, and so it's multi-layered, right? In terms of how we're looking at various glass floors, and so as you're moving, and that's why again I know we're why we're supposed to see it. Remind me of your work as well. You're looking at these worlds and environments. You're moving, and that's why again I know we're why we're supposed to see it. Remind me of your work as well. You're looking at these worlds and environments, right? So And you have this kind of spectacle of this kind of glittery waterfall that arrives at the end of the experience. So you actually go through this ride as you're going through the space. And this is kind of what it looks like. Every area is mirrored or glass or see-through or transparent. And we have different kind of active things, particle effects that are in here as well, that just creates a feeling of atmosphere. So this is, I'll show you a bit of a walkthrough so this you understand a bit of this, the pacing of it. Turn up the volume here. So it's kind of a slower interaction, a slower pace world as you go through, and you just kind of sit and get this tour of this kind of cosmic place as you go through it. So the loop is about 3 minutes. We have these kind of hanging teeth, I call them, in the space, right? Almost like in a part of your mouth or other places, clouds, crystals, this kind of magical odd space. And so this is from one camera point of view of the VR, but again, you can move your head throughout the whole experience. You go on your guide rail system, you move around. So this is walkthrough is kind of showing you only one, but you can kind of start seeing how you're starting to move through. Because it did give some people vertigo. That's one thing to think about when you're designing VR worlds, that if you don't have a steady grounding, like with your feet, people might feel like they're falling to the floor, things like that. So it's always good to test that or warn people about that, you know, but we can see like in the distance, this glitter thing that happens, and eventually it ends with that kind of almost story arc where you'll go through the waterfall at the end of it. Right? All right. So then, task-based interaction, right? This is a piece called Echo. And it's just, you're given a hammer, and it's a world full of hammers as you're going through the space. And you have to navigate the world through banging through these different things to figure out what you're to move this box around, right? So the box as you move around, and it creates this. It's a gun, but I changed the gun to hammer violent to have a gun to navigate with. I don't know if you can hear it. It makes this little pew 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 sound as you go through, right? As you go through. Then I guess you navigate and start moving around. So it's giving someone a reason to be in the space of work to do, but there's actually no job to be done. As you go through and move the ball and you get around, you just kind of walk around throwing hammers. There's no work. You can work as much as you want or not work at all. So as you go through it, right? So I'll just kind of, so you get through the stairs at the end, and you can see that you're in the landscape here. Again, this is unreal. You're again in this kind of sci-fi world of hammers and trees, and as you move through, and you can just randomly throw hammers all the way through and keep on working. Right? So that's kind of visually what it looks like as you go through. Then I started thinking about companion-based interaction. So how do we think about these sandbox ways of moving through spaces? And if you've ever worked in Unreal Engine, a lot of the assets you bring in are either, what do I want to say, these warrior, whatever kind of women, or zombies. So these are zombies, like golden zombies. So I kind of changed the decor to these transparent women. So they kind of blend in with the environment and you know, these golden women here as they move through. So you can like, I started thinking about the animation of it. So as you're walking, this is you actually, you don't see the person running, you'll see the person beside you. So you replace that person as you're going through the space. So there's always someone beside you wherever you go, and they're just slightly ahead of you, right? So you don't get to see who they are, but you're co-walking and exploring the space together, right? So you know maybe what you look like because based on who you're standing beside, but this is kind of the figure as you're navigating through. So go for a walk, and then I kind of changed it and evolved it, and you know, changed the type of walk. So go for a walk, and then I kind of changed it and evolved it, and you know, changed the type of walk they go on. This is more about a glass enclosed environment. I started thinking about these idea of transparencies between walls and bodies as you're moving through spaces. Right? So again, if you're the one person, you only see what's next to you. So you start blending in with other places and then other things in the environment as well. as you're going through. So I'll just kind of wrap up and talk about some of my PhD research. So starting to work with DepthKit as pilot partner with volumetric video for VR. So what I'm doing is filming myself during quarantine, right? It's a single camera that I'm using, but you can have 360 cameras that surround you. So started thinking about different kind of considerations: filming, camera, environment, architecture, scale, layers, how we think about pacing and loops of the clips, speed, and spatialized sound as we're going through it. So my early research is from 2018. So this is kind of what the asset looks like as you bring in. It's actually kind of a video model on a skeleton. And this is a beta that was an Unreal, but you can start seeing the video and the world do not match. You can start seeing it doesn't feel like it's as blended. And they actually stopped supporting Unreal and only working Unity. So you gotta learn Unity, right? That's the next thing, right? So this is what I worked on last summer. This is I call it the toolkit. This is what I had, right? It's a game PC laptop, Xbox Connect, tripod, Connect adapter, mouse, external hard drive, microphone, Quest 2, Quest PC cable, a ring light when I do my shooting, and the software dev kit and Unity. So you can see here, like the Xbox 2 cameras, I think a lot of the other cameras they're having now is sold out. So I just got one off of eBay and it worked. So this is kind of the scale of how far you need to shoot to get a full body representation rather than a waist up. So single camera, 10 by 10 foot space, clear background, and then film during the day. And then you start bringing those assets into Unity, right? So you can see this kind of representation, the rich representation that is animated in these short loops. Then I started laying them out together. They're all, I call this the looking series, where they're just myself looking at myself as I go through. And this is kind of what they kind of look like. It's kind of glitchy, but you can have a sense of what the loop is. So just want to see how the bodies start looking in space and feeling in space and how they react to each other and have their kind of personalities. And then we start building spaces for them. Like, how do we consider building space for volumetric bodies? So this is kind of what the world looks like. I started building rail-based interaction model. You start thinking about what belongs in the world, how important is reality, how much reality is enough, right? And you start bringing like these real depictions to the space. Start thinking about the angle of the camera, bringing it through, pacing and loops of each character. Should characters have more weight than others as you're going through it? How you light it. So not only lighting for video, but lighting for the 3D world as well, to make sure that matches as part of the considerations. They're fragmented bodies because I only did a single camera, so they're all kind of show that enough representation of a body to know it's a body, right? How much information do you need, right? And this is, as it starts looking at the world design, what it's starting to look like, right? I also started using the audio track. This is very fast. I did this different version here. You see kind of what the speed of it will actually kind of look like as you go through the space. So you can start seeing these animations within VR that are representations. And so the audio track is, and this is based on Jared Lanner's, he has 39 considerations for VR. So I made my own considerations of volumetric video in VR, how we think about questions for artists to consider when developing VR. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Questions, comments, concerns?
I love the questions that you just showed. Do you mind going back to the
Sure.
last slide?
So these are the questions here. I can read them out, but it just takes, I know it takes me 3 minutes to read them because of the audio loop of it. But this is the first set of questions that are posed in the VR work, and then these are the second set of questions here.
Sorry, Lisa, your question?
Yes,
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
And that's part of your PhD?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So the advantage of using volumetric video versus regular video is that I'm just trying to like understand the difference between using volumetric video versus regular video is that I'm just trying to like understand the difference between
Sure. So
a volumetric video versus a regular video.
sure. So let me go back to the slide. Hang on. I'm filming it here. I had a lot more slides with the filming sheet. So instead of a flat screen that you embed in Unity and it looks like a TV set, right? This is starting to see shapes, like it's a video built on a model, right?
So it's kind of like a point cloud.
It is kind of like a point cloud. It's a video on a point cloud, right? And so it's one camera. You can have 360 cameras. You can have 360 bodies, right? And that are filmed in spaces and short loops, right? So this is how it's filled with one camera, but you can sync them, all cameras to have that 360, right? So if you have enough depth cameras and you have enough like recording power, but these are just kind of considerations. But this is just based on one Xbox Connect camera.
Oh, Xbox.
Yeah, this is the this camera here in the middle there, where we use for video games, right? It's kind of like a hack. You can use the Azure Connect. That's what's most used, but they were sold at all during the pandemic. So yeah, I think it was a supply chain manufacturing issue, but so I got an old Connect and the drivers worked.
So what made you want to like experiment with volumetric video? Did you see like a lack of video content and you were like, why not try this?
I think it's more about the idea of mixed reality than the opposite way. Right? So with augmented reality, we're looking at animations or digital within a digital environment, but how do we take real representation and bring it into these synthetic worlds? Right? And so have to have this, and especially came from those zombie bodies, right? Where women, right? That's the only representation I can choose from to bring as models, figures, right? How can I think about representation and film representation? What are the impacts and what are considerations we think about, right? We're building spaces for these representations.
I really love the companion project because usually, like it's not common in VR, I think, to have somebody with you, or even actually, I thought it's like a 3D person controller when you kind of like see your avatar next to you. It's really, I don't think I ever saw like any projects with. I mean, like some does like animals or something, but it's very close and like, it's kind of like part of your body. But
You see it with tools, like in games, right? Like even like old Portal games where you have to the box and maneuver against it, like that almost comes like a companion to move through spaces, right? To know how to navigate it with something like a tool, but not necessarily a person with you, right? Like a co-working art type of game. So yeah.
Did you start that research during the pandemic, the companion?
No, that's from VR stuff during the pandemic, all the development video.
Yeah,
I think that's 2017, 2018.
I was just curious because it seems very like, sort of because of the isolation and stuff, that it might be nice to have like a buddy that's following you around.
Well, it's also this idea of multiplicity of self in a contained environment, like it's like this amplification of that, right? That's probably definitely inspired the pandemic, right? But yeah, I think it's just understanding these kind of closed spaces.
I really like the glitched out aesthetic of the single camera volumetric video, like the kind of like the sort of tassely edges. It's really nice. It's like not trying to be like super like high realism, but you're bringing.
It can be high realistic, but for me, understand a lot of the work, especially when you're doing research or artist learning, there's a lot of errors in making, right? And sometimes the glitch and the error is part of the work and part of the development of it, right? It's not necessarily like design execution, right? Like the pipeline, but a lot of it is exploratory, right? It's research creation.
I also love that aesthetic, like kind of like when there's something that gets sort of lost and it becomes like a memory or like a dream or it's like edges that float off into nowhere. And I find it really fascinating because in VR so much like photogrammetry style recreation of real physical places, and the edges are always, kind of unfinished and loose and similar to your figure. And I find it's actually captivating, and because you can replicate the real, but it just isn't. It's something else. It evolves. So I feel like those edges kind of like capture that feeling. Yeah. Mhm.
So I think the next phase of this research, to bring back to full circle, is to think about this all next fitting back into AR, right? And think about how we can think about real spaces and integrating these film and video loops as well. So we'll see how it goes. Not until existence, but we didn't get into that today. But these kind of like online Mozilla hubs, connected environments, representation of multiple worlds, a real life world, visual world. I deleted a lot of these slides. But yeah. Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
If anyone,
Yeah.
of course, thinks of some more, like we can talk more at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What an amazing presentation. So nice to learn about your work, and can't wait to see what comes next. Amazing. What a cool night we're having together. So I will formally introduce our next presenter. We're so lucky to be with Jawa El-Kash tonight. Jawa is an artist and technologist and researcher based in Toronto. She uses technology as a medium to play on the poetics of the everyday nature of living in the world. Through the ephemeral mediums of painting, holography, virtual reality, and online simulations, facsimiles of our world can be created, playing on the poetics of time, space, and memory, offering a new way of perceiving and sensing the world around us. The lens of technology expands the imaginative horizon of our view of the world and the objects, spaces, and living things that occupy it. El-Kash creates replicas of reality that blend the line between the invisible and the visible, the real and the simulated, the fictional and the fact. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I'll just kind of shift you a little.
Yeah.
So we're getting in there.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for inviting me to talk about my work. So, I'm an artist, technologist, and researcher. I was born and raised in Syria, and I moved to Canada around 7 years ago to pursue a career in the arts. I went to Oakland University, graduated in integrated media and painting. And my first couple of years at OCAD, I was kind of doing everything like sculptural work, painting. And it wasn't until my thesis year at OCAD that I fell in love with VR, especially as a tool to re-experience lost artifacts or lost archaeology. And so the desire to kind of recreate stories, objects, and plant life from Syria has always been a main theme in my work. So I do work in virtual reality, online simulations, and painting. So I'm going to show you guys my last two projects, my most recent projects. And so this project is called Rockaway 2.0. And Rockaware is a type of ceramic that is native to this very rich, very historically rich medieval city in Syria called Raqqa. So my latest project is a research and creation project. So the thesis of this project is to research the form and function of Rockaware pottery and create a series of 3D models that revitalizes Rockaware to contemporary identity. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm looking at these very old ancient Syrian ceramics and I'm transforming them into a contemporary identity. And what I mean by that is that I'm creating 3D models of these pottery that steer away from direct imitation. So I'm not just looking at a pottery and creating an exact copy of it. I'm kind of creating what I called imagined replicas. So using my own imagination, also research, to create new identities for these pots that will be able to live as 3D models in VR worlds, AR worlds, holograms. So that's what I mean by contemporary identity. We can make a new identity for these models and use them in our everyday world and make new characters of them. So this is my research board. This is kind of like my process. This is called Mirrorboard, and it's basically like a digital whiteboard. So I'm taking you guys to like the bare skeleton of the project. So these are like the books that I was looking at. I was initially creating like a database of all the Raqqa pottery that exists in the world. And these are like some of my readings, some of the notes that I take. And just, I don't want to sound like too much of a history lesson, but just to give you a bit of an idea of why Rockaway is so important. So Islamic pottery is a big topic, and Islamic pottery was thriving in the 12th, 13th century around Syria, Persia, Egypt. These are like three big centers for Islamic pottery, but what made Rockaway special is that it wasn't court-controlled art movement. Persia and Egypt were very controlled by the court, and every piece of pottery that they made was made to be as a very extravagant gift. Versus in Rockaway, because there was no kind of government control over the artists, they had a very the pottery itself has a very strong sense of exuberance, and Rockaway is also a very controversial topic in archaeology because they were very highly looted, and so when the mythical stories 1001 Nights came up and it was introduced to the Western world, Rockaway was mentioned in one of the stories as a mythical object, and that's where just in the Western world, everyone in the Western world wanted a Rockaway pottery to own. So people started creating copies of Rockaway in Turkey and Iran and Egypt, and so it was copied so much that archaeologists to this day don't have a specific date on when it was made, and they don't necessarily have proof of who made it. But I like to look at Rockaway as an art movement, and relating back to my practice, the main I use technology is to revitalize these ancient objects and to give them a new identity. So within this research board, I wanted to create a series of 6 3D models, and each 3D model kind of tells a theme of Raqqa. Because it's a very historically rich city, there were a lot of achievements made there in astronomy and mysticism, and there was a lot of very philosophical thinking that came from that region. So I basically categorize every single Raqqa pot in the world that exists in museums or books, and I categorize them under like whether botany, astronomy, human protection, and I was researching the form and function of them, and looking at whether there's a specific function for each pot, why these colors are there, and so as you can see, each pot there's very heavy information that was collected on each pot in order for me to create an imagined replica that looks like it's real, but it's not. So these were kind of like my first studies of 3D, like modeling, just very basic shapes. And then I started to create silhouettes of the pot in Illustrator in order to be able to create accurate 3D models. And during this time, I was also collecting all the motifs on Rockaway pottery and Rockaway ceramics in order to be able to create good replicas or good fake copies. So I wanted to create these 3D models that look like they're ancient objects, but they're models. So this was all kind of like my research, and then this is where the project really starts. So there's 6 different pots, and each of them have its own theme, and they're categorized under life and death. And I use this kind of life cycle to create this archive, because Raqqa as a city has been destroyed and rebuilt several times during history. And these models, the pottery acts as like a metaphor of how the city was built and rebuilt. So the pottery used to be smuggled, and they used to hide valuable pots in big wasters in order to make them seem like they have no value, but actually they were really valuable. So this whole life cycle of life and death is what I was interested in. So for example, this is me creating part number one, which is called the Guardian of Raqqa. So these are the colors that I wanted to use. These are the motifs, and then this is some writing, and then I started to hand render these motifs to create the first part. Um, and then after hand rendering each motif, I would scan them and then use Houdini Substance Painter to create this first model. So we can look at this as like the first draft of the first pot. So this pot is called the Guardian of Raqqa, and it symbolizes. Well, my work is very inspired by Syrian culture, but also my grandfather was a plant pathologist who dedicated his life to studying arid lands in the Middle East, and he was also studying how to modify specifically wheat seeds. So I had a very personal relationship with nature growing up. I grew up on his farm, in his greenhouses. So this pot is kind of dedicated to him, and it's also dedicated to the agriculture of Raqqa. So my work is very inspired by fact, by the facts of Rockaway, the facts of Raqqa, like the stories and the history of it, but also by my own personal experience of Syria and growing up in a place that's now very inaccessible and known to the world as a place full of destruction. So that's why, so yeah, using technology as a way to counter that destruction has always been a theme in my work. So this is a project that's in process. As you can see, I'm like going crazy over here, like collecting the glazes and collecting the motifs and really studying them so I can create 3D models that really encapsulate the spirit of Rockaway and tell its story. So this is, I'm still in the first plot, and this is, for example, the second plot that is, the subject of this plot is astronomy, and this is Latani's observatory, who is a really important astronomer from Raqqa. And this plot, for example, these are the sketches that will be turned into 3D model, but this used Latani's astronomical sketches, and this will tell another story from Raqqa. So this is one of my latest projects. Yeah, this is my latest project, latest research project. And so again, this is like an archive of 3D models, very heavy research based project. Um, my other latest project is called A Leap of Faith. And this is a WebGL simulation. And WebGL simulation is a way of rendering interactive 3D graphics in a web browser. And I'm really excited by this technology because as a person working with technology, I'm sure you both know it's hard to create work that is accessible by people everywhere, that's not reliant on expensive hardware, expensive machinery. So WebGL simulations allow me to create worlds that are accessible by anyone around the world. So as soon as you visit this web browser, you can, I'm just gonna, can I actually, do you have a USB on your laptop? Oh, I think we can use this guy actually. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very hard to maneuver these like 3D worlds without a mouse. It's almost impossible. Continue. Okay. That's okay. Let me try something else. So this is a work in progress, as you guys can see. I'm just trying to move my mouse, and for some reason I can't. Sorry, let me just try to. No, that's okay. That's okay. I can do without the mouse. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Um, so this world, usually my 3D worlds are very atmospheric, very non-linear worlds where you don't really need to know a story to experience the world. I wanted to do something different with this project, which is still a work in progress. So this project is meant to be an online simulation where you experience different atmospheric phenomena that you wouldn't be able to experience in the real world. So I talked about my work being using technology to resurrect like ancient objects and ancient stories but I also am interested in creating simulations that empower you to re-experience atmospheric phenomena that you wouldn't see in the real world. So how do we use technology to look at things in nature that we wouldn't be able to see every day? Kind of like using technology like a lens. Um, so this project, um, you start off in this like temple that's decorated with typography, and you have these portals that open and close. So as soon as you press F, these portals open up, and as you can see, like this section is for 22-degree halo, this one's for meteors, and this one's for aurora, which are all three different atmospheric phenomena that you very rarely get the chance to see in real life. So sorry, it seems that I can only get my keyboard or my mouse to work. I know. That's okay. Okay, that's okay. This is a work in progress, guys. So there's a lot of like testing that I need to do because I work on a PC and because I'm creating my own website and hosting it on my own. So probably the keyboards don't work, but basically it's just like an online game where you can like maneuver the world using WASD. And the idea is that you go into this portal, then you're in this entirely different landscape where you're in a mountain looking at aurora in the sky. And with this project, I'm using it's okay, don't worry about it. I'm using Tilt Brush to paint in VR and to create my own skyboxes in VR. I did study painting in OPAD, and I'm always trying to merge the two mediums together and to tell like a meaningful story. So as you can see, there is a mountain that you see there, and if I was able to walk, I would go through the portal, and then I'm in an entirely different environment. So these are very like generic settings. Like this portal asset is just like a $20 asset in Unity that anyone can download and use. But I'm trying to push the limits of the technology into creating these stories and these worlds that are very inspired by paintings. So this project is very inspired by painterly depictions of atmospheric phenomena from the 17th century. That's why I wanted this Webgl simulation to look like a lithograph or look like an illustration, look like it's something that doesn't belong in this world. Um, so this is my second latest project. So both projects that I just showed you guys are works in progress. And the last project that I was working on, you guys are works in progress. And the last project that I was working on, okay, so this mouse works. So this environment is called the Sea Vault, and it's inspired by the real Svalbard Global Sea Vault in the Netherlands. So there's an actual real vault called the Seed Vault, and it contains a copy of every seed specimen that ever existed in the world. So I was really inspired by that, especially because I am very influenced by my grandfather's work and this idea of of thinking about my grandfather through his wheat fields and through his memories and my memories of his wheat fields. So this is another online simulation um, where you can use your keyboard to walk around and And so this I wanted this experience to disorient your sense of time, space, and scale. So as soon as you enter, so we began at like an icy mountain, and now we're in this spaceship tunnel, this very long spaceship tunnel, and it's meant to kind of disorient your sense of time, scale, and also just bring um, this imaginative and like awe like feeling. And I wanted to create this like I guess something that you wouldn't expect going into the seed vault. Like creating an experience that is exciting, but also one that's meditative and one that doesn't really require a lot of engagement from the user. Um, so this is like a spaceship tunnel, and the motive of this piece was to create like 3 vaults in outer space that each contain recaps of plants. So at the end of this tunnel, you'll see 3 vaults of an apple, sunflower, and wheat vault. Um, and you guys will see what they look like. It is a very long tunnel. It's meant to be experienced at your own pace. And this is also a WebXR. So if I'm working on making it a WebXR. So ideally, if you had a headset, you would connect the headset to your laptop, and then you'd also be able to experience this world in VR. And so we're reaching the end of the space tunnel. And so here we have 3 vaults that we can walk into. This is the apple vault. This is sunflower vault. This is the wheat vault. And this is the first Webgl simulation where I use typography to create a linear narrative to kind of let the viewer know that they're going somewhere. So this way to the wheat vault. And so again, using typography to create a linear narrative. And then I'm also a big fan of, and so again, using typography to create a linear narrative. And then I'm also a big fan of using scale to create exaggerated environments. And really going back to like my memories of being in my grandfather's wheat fields as a child. And I think there's a special connection between like VR and like the childlike imagination of our world. And it's kind of like using the scale to recapture what it felt like as a child to be in a giant field of wheat. Um, so that's the feeling that I wanted to capture and share. And I am a fan. Oh, I don't know what I just did, but I am a fan of using like wireframes to show the skeleton of objects to kind of remind the viewer that you're looking at it. You're in a computer simulated world, and we also spoke about like realism in virtual worlds and how that's great, but there's also sometimes meaning that can arise from using different materials that remind the viewer that this is a simulated world. Um, Unfortunately, we're back at the beginning, so you will have to do all that journey again to get back into the vaults. But you guys can experience this at your own pace, going to the cvault.space on a Firefox browser. And you can also visit my website where I speak about all of these works. And this is my 3rd Webgl simulation. The previous one that I showed you guys would be my 4th one. So I am really interested in the technology and kind of interested in pushing its limits. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
It's nice that you start from somewhere that's personal, from something that's familiar to you. from your own personal memory kind of like grows through research. You gain more, I guess, information from other voices throughout history and stuff.
Mhm.
It's fun.
Thank you.
Do you have much sense of how many people are plugging into WebEx or?
I know it's a growing technology. There is a lot of interest, but the problem with it is that it is accessible, but also there's a lot of people who don't have good computers. So it really depends on each person's machine. But I guess what is exciting about it is that it's accessible. But as you know, technology, there's always new tools coming out. So now there's Web3, which is kind of is built on the technology of WebGL. But yeah, there's definitely interest because it does allow you to access immersive worlds in a web browser. You don't need to be to like
Are you able to
experience it.
capture any analytics through your website?
It's interesting that you asked. I was just looking at that yesterday, and I own a bunch of domains. And so net firms, which I'm with, they only give you statistics for all of them. They don't give you individual statistics for like how many people are visiting this website. So I don't know if there's like one person seeing it a year or 100. I have no idea, even though I've been trying to know that, and I told them like it doesn't make sense that you guys are giving me that information. But yeah, I would like to know that to see how successful it is, or are people actually looking at it online, or would people rather go into a gallery for the experience of viewing art in a gallery versus then viewing it online? So there's both spaces that are going on. Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing your process, like that board with all of the stuff, with all the material knowledge that you're taking from like history and actual objects, and then bringing that into like a space that you're recreating these things using that material knowledge in a space that is able to be sort of flexible and like fantastical. And I
Right.
think that's really nice, that kind of combination. It's like I guess it kind of like also reminds me a little bit of like the idea that I just lost the idea that reminding things. There's something with history and the sort of malleable sort of stuff. Like when we were talking about like how the pottery is like there's so many sort of like replicas of it, and it sort of has destabilized the history or the ability to like locate those histories in a kind of timeline or whatever. I think that's like really cool, like a cool parallel with like how timelines might kind of play out in virtual space and stuff. I don't know. There's something really cool there about your process and where it goes.
Thank you. Yeah, research-based projects, I didn't know how much work it actually take until I started my first serious research-based project. And collecting information is just, it's very tedious, but then at the end you feel like this kind of, like, it just feels great to have all this information about the objects, but at the same time, you don't want it to feel like a history lesson. At the same time, you want your viewer to look at the model and see the story for themselves. I don't want to have to feed the story to them. So there's this kind of like, there's a line between like the history and the fact and fiction, like you said. It's very playful and very fun to be in, but there's also lots of information. So you have to be like really, you have to know what you're looking for, because you can easily get lost.
And it's great to be able to have an artist talk to where we get a little more info too. I really like seeing the board, the way it's organized and everything.
Yeah.
It's super interesting.
Thank you. I've been working really hard on that board, like every day for months. So you guys are the first people to see it. So I'm glad you said organized because I was trying to keep it sane.
I also really, I don't want to take up all the time here because I'm sure people have things they want to say, but I also really enjoyed that you took it into like this like hand drawing sort of thing, just around like that experience of gathering like symbols and knowledge and all that stuff, and then like that process of like it's a very different process when you hand draw. Like it sort of weirdly internalizes things in some way. I don't know. It's like I feel like I don't know. It's just like yeah, the difference between the material and the immaterial, and like how you're kind of playing
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about like the potters themselves. If they had this technology today, I don't think they would draw it on a computer. They would hand draw it because what's special about these spots is that most of them were painted in minutes. So they were done very fast. They weren't like intricate, small. That's why they have a very strong sense of exuberance, very strong sense of life. And a lot of them would look very contemporary, like a lot of the motifs on the pots. Like for example, this is like a good example because when I saw this pattern, it reminded me of like the Louis and reminded me of like the Louis V pattern or like the luxury brands patterns and things that they use. And this is done in like 12th, 13th century, which is very minimal, very simple versus like the Persian pottery, which is super intricate. They spend like months working on one pottery. Well, this is done in like 5 minutes. So yeah, I was really interested by like the way they painted it. That's why I wanted like the hand drawn element to it. That was really important to me. And also like the drips and the little imperfections of the pot that I'm trying to translate into the 3D model. Um, yeah.
So you're also looking at like the form and the function of the pottery and stuff that.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about that in terms of your own like 3D models? Like, do they have like, what is the function of the models? Like, where would they be? You said they're going to be a collection of 3D models. Right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really good question. So in the beginning, I was interested to know whether like there's certain pots that were used for certain things. Like for example, this one, um, it has a very generic shape. So this shape could be for anything versus this shape over here, specifically used for ink, specifically used to hold ink. And this is what archaeologists say. It could really be anything because after reading all these sources, you realize that okay, they're scholarly people, but they all have very different opinions. There's not one shared date that they gave Raqqa. There's not one shared like function for the pottery. So they're all kind of like just as I'm doing. That's the process that they were doing, just like looking at the pots and trying to make one function of them. So I'm kind of like making my own function. For example, with this first pot, which is the Guardian of Raqqa, um, this is the first draft, but on the inside, so over here, instead of white, it's gonna have this overglaze material. And overglaze is a specific type of glaze that they use to make something waterproof. So the function of this pot is to hold water because it's the Guardian of Raqqa. So obviously the force that unifies anything in the garden is water. So that's why this pot, when it's going to be rendered, it's going to have water inside. It's going to have like a shiny material on the inside. Versus this one, that's why it's very tricky because this one is an astronomical pot. So at the beginning, I wanted it to act like a microscope. So I wanted to have like a lens here and a lens at the top that would be rendered. So these are things that I'm considering. It's just hard to like translate them into not looking super science fiction. I still want them to look like ancient objects, but that's why I feel like I'm using like the diagrams of this astronomer, um, the diagrams, and also looking at like these old pots. This looks like kind of like a sundial. So this is an astronomical pot, but it had no real function. This had no real function for astronomers. But yeah, that's a line that I'm also thinking about. I'm thinking about injecting that into the models because that's part of like a big part of my thesis thing, which is the form and function of each pod and what does it do. Um, yeah.
Your research is just, yeah, it's amazing that you put everything together and you still, developing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very specific process. I wonder, what are you planning to have? I mean, you just plan to render the objects, or for example, you also want to build like a space for them, or like, place them as like, objects, like
Right.
objects in museums.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think the first step that I wanted to do is make them a contemporary identity, make them a 3D model, and then like there's a myriad of platforms that it can live in. Like it can live in AR, VR. It's just about finding a meaningful place for them to live. I don't want to just put them in a VR scape just because they're 3D models and they can be in a VR space. I want to find like the right medium for it. I do also work in holography, so I was interested in making digital holograms of these 3D models once they're done, once this archive is done. And yeah, that's kind of like the second step of the project that I don't want to even start thinking about because I'm still, as you can see, I have a lot of empty things here. So these need to be filled up first before I start thinking about like what am I going to do with this. Right now, I'm still figuring out the why. Why is this important? Why is this a good project? And then at the end, I'm kind of going to start thinking about, okay, now what do I do with them after like the archive is finished?
I really want to see what is the outcome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, if all three of you guys are involved in this process of recreation to some extent. I mean, you're very much recreating and also extending these historical artifacts and slaughter, recreating yourself visually, right? And are after recreating these sort of building upon the ones that built. I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on that, like, that process of recreation using these forms of technology to recreate and sort of insert yourself into that process.
Right. Well, it's a good question because like our first intuitive reaction to technology is to recreate everything that we see. That's why with this project, I really wanted to not copy it, kind of use my imagination to create like these imagined replicas. Um, yeah, it's a good question because we are like inspired by everything that we see, and to an extent, everything that we create is a replication of something that we have seen or something that has inspired us. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see like I'm excited that artists are now using technology more because I feel like artists are the ones who are going to be able to push it out of its boundary. And now archaeology art world is big. Everyone is looking at ancient objects and trying to figure out how do we recreate them, or it's a big theme, it's a big topic, and I'm excited to see how artists how artists have their own take on that.
What's fascinating for me with this is that it's like it's what archaeologists, as you mentioned, have always done is recreation or trying to recreate the stories, but it's as much fiction as it is fact, right?
Right.
As you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's in a sense like it's like your work is sort of laying that bare. It's like, you know, why try to hide behind some sort of objective truth when you can just acknowledge that, you know, that there is a certain amount of fiction or creativity involved in any sort of recreation or retelling.
Right. And on that note, I think like technology is like empowering everyone to kind of be whoever you want to be. Like you can be like a pseudo archaeologist, you can be a pseudo scientist, you can be pseudo whatever you want to be. I mean, pseudo is just like a word to say that you're not an official archaeologist, but I feel like that's why research-based projects are really exciting to me because you can have like a bit of both worlds. And yeah.
The delicacy of it is really beautiful as well. You capture the fragility of it.
Yeah.
With the objects, but also in the seeds, right? Like the seed museum, and you have this kind of sense of an artist's hand and how you approach model. It's really quite beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it takes a lot of work to make something in Unity look good. So much work. It takes so much like filters and so much like versions and like I have like 4 hard drives at home that are full. Like it's a lot of work to make something look good in Unity. So I'm sure you both know that.
Good, and it has to work.
Yeah, it has to work, obviously, yeah. I mean, that's why the testing of WebGL is so important. I'm always like making sure everyone in my house like is on the website testing because everyone in my house has PCs, but now I know that the keyboard isn't working on a Mac. So these are like just things that are parts of the process of making it like an accessible, fully functioning experience. So yeah, please feel free to visit these websites at your own pace. If you feel like you're at home, they're all linked to my website. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks everyone. What a really lovely, amazing presentation. Learned so much, and it's been so beautiful to hear about your work and reflect together and think about the different relationships between your work as well. Kind of attention to histories and mythologies and personal lived experiences, digging deep into the past and through representation, through replication, finding ways to, I really love what you said, Gemma, just to technology can enable us to push away like definitions and be who we want to be or integrate multiple histories and non-linear narratives. So I think that you really illuminate so many potentials in what's happening in your own work and in this like vast medium of technology in general. So just to close off the night, it's been an honor to host you, and on behalf of STYLY, I want to remind you that STYLY is an organization that seeks to break down barriers of access and at the same time invest in emerging media arts practice and technology with an ethos that we can grow via experimental creation, community engagement, support for creatives, and education. So that's what we're aiming to do over the next however long we can run with this. So hope to see you at the next event. And it's good. If I don't have your email, like let me know. And otherwise, you can stay in touch on Instagram. And it's good. If I don't have your email, like let me know. And otherwise, you can stay in touch on Instagram or the meetup group link. But I'll always be happy to learn more and talk more. Yeah. Thank you. And like one last thank you to Tristan for organizing and hosting us at InterAccess. Amazing. So feel free to like linger and we'll be cleaning up for a little bit. So no rush to leave, so we can relax and turn the light on and yeah.
Thanks to anyone who's watching.